Hey, folks, welcome back to the Carl Zahn Show. Appreciate you tuning in. Smash that like button. That's what the kids like to say. Smash it. Welcome back. Got a ton of stuff to talk about this week. Going to try to keep it, brief and concise. So, big news, the presidential debate coming up next Tuesday. Former President Trump and the installed nominee Kamala Harris, who is locked down right now in debate prep as we speak, hopefully not using the same prep team that President Biden used for his 20-day debate prep lockdown. All kinds of different opinions about this all over the map. I personally am not sure that the debate makes a big difference in poll numbers or who's voting for who. I could be wrong, but I look at these two philosophies, if you want to call it, the far left loon progressive woke policy of Kamala Harris and the more conservative traditional American views of Donald Trump and his supporters. And it's just hard for me to imagine that there's anyone kind of on the fence in between those two waiting to see how the debate goes to make a decision. But I could be wrong, and surely if either one of them has an epic fail, that will have some impact, I suppose. But it seems to me what generally happens is CNN, MSNBC, all the usual people there will be calling it a great success for Kamala Harris, regardless of how she performs. And to be fair, the conservative side will be saying the same thing about Trump, regardless of how he performs. They have so many rules in place and everything else. It's just the whole thing seems these debates are more and more scripted and constrained to the point where it really just comes down to theater. But nonetheless, like most Americans, I'll be watching. It's going to be interesting. My money says that she comes out like, a rootin' tootin' cowboy with 2 6-shooters. So I think she's going to come out very aggressive as she was in the early presidential debates. And there were only a few for her because she, as we all know, nobody liked her or wanted her. And she didn't go far when she was running for president. So my money is that she comes out swinging, kind of like a female version of Yosemite Sam, and that's, I expect, how she will approach the presidential debate. Other fascinating news last week, Senator Josh Hawley came out, and during the congressional investigations into the Butler, Pennsylvania assassination attempt on Donald Trump, they have discovered now last week that many of the so-called Secret Service agents / snipers that were on duty in Butler, Pennsylvania were not Secret Service at all, but were DHS, Department of Homeland Security, detectives that normally were working on child trafficking cases, that took a 2-hour webinar in which it said the audio was only working intermittently. And somehow this 2-hour webinar certified them as Secret Service sniper professionals or Secret Service. Somehow a 2-hour webinar qualified these people to protect a former president of the United States. Utterly, utterly insane. There's so many scandals going on right now that are epic. Like this whole Butler, Pennsylvania, the Trump assassination attempt, as we look back on it, it's so clearly a setup. It just, you can't call it. They keep saying it's inept and, we should have had more coverage. We made mistakes. No, I don't think so. I think it went exactly how they wanted it to go. I'd be curious to know who chose that venue, if it was someone inside the Trump campaign, as I expect it would have been, and who is that person? Because if you look at that venue, especially in hindsight now, but even if you looked at it, let's say none of that ever happened, you go, wow, a big open field with a water tower and a bunch of flat roofs. It was just everything short of like wooden sniper towers having been built around the perimeter. It's kind of really shocking as you look back on it now. It just seems like, to me, a complete and utter setup. So now in the wake of this finding out that these people took a 2-hour webinar. I mean, my God, you can't get qualified for the fry-a-later at McDonald's with a 2-hour webinar. Or maybe you can. I don't know. And then there was other news last week I heard, unsubstantiated, that the whole thing at Butler, Pennsylvania was just a semantics linguistics problem when it turned out that the Secret Service thought that the Trump team had actually asked for secret service, which is a completely different thing. That's a very small cult-like group of people that have a secretion fetish. I don't want to get into graphic detail about what kind of secretion I'm talking about or where it might be coming from, but turns out it could have been just a linguistic semantics issue where they thought they had asked for secret service. Typically companies that deal with wet basements or, let's just say oozing from bodily organs. So Secret Service, secret service, just keep that in mind. Two completely different things. So make sure you get the right 800 number when you're dialing that one up. Other great news from Trump last week, and again, this is one of the things I love about Donald Trump, the thinking outside of the box. And he has to stay one step ahead of Kamala Harris, who is adopting all of his policies. So last week, Kamala Harris came out and said, they're going to cut the red tape and make it easier for small businesses to succeed and be successful. And this coming from the woman whose entire administration walked around with red tape dispensers on their belt. Nobody wrapped more red tape around things than the liberals, and especially the Biden administration. And now Kamala Harris is going to be the one cutting red tape and getting rid of regulations. And again, this is a Trump policy and a Trump move. It's exactly what Trump did when he took office, which was, thin out the regulations so that people can actually do things. So you can get a building permit for a commercial property and you can do things like this. So it's just utterly insane how Kamala Harris is. I mean, honestly, she is a can of orange spray paint away from being Donald Trump. And it wouldn't surprise me if she comes out at the debate completely orange. And we are approaching pumpkin season, so it wouldn't surprise me at all. But she's just, no taxes on tips, completely reinventing herself. Anyone who believes it is a fool. This is a typical Democratic play. Win the White House and then, move to the center, win the White House, and then go back to your far left policies that were your intentions all along. But to get back to my point, Trump announced last week that he will be assigning Elon Musk, and Elon Musk has agreed to head up a government agency that the sole job will be to study the efficiency of government agencies. So in other words, how productive are you? How efficient are you? How well are our dollars being spent? And of course, we all know what this will result in, because government agencies for decades now have been the most cumbersome, lethargic entities of anything. I mean, they get billions and billions of dollars. They don't have to perform. They don't have to produce a real product. None of us in the private sector can live that way. If we don't perform at our job or we don't perform in our business, then you don't have a job or you don't have a business. That's just capitalism and survival of the fittest. And so we all know without question for decades that the government gets away with all these agencies, government employees. I mean, a good example is the infrastructure bill, where they had billions and billions of dollars to build charging stations for electric vehicles. And 3.5 years into the Biden administration, they have built like 7 across the country. Unbelievable. This is why in Europe, in many places, they privatized, like Department of Public Works, Department of Roads and Highways. They privatized it so that private companies that have to run a tight ship and show a profit are doing the state and federal work themselves because they're more efficient than the government agencies. we need look no further than the post office. And I'm sure after saying this, they'll never have a piece of mail delivered again. But, the U.S., the United States Post Office is notoriously a typical kind of government subsidized agency where everyone moves like they're on a morphine drip. I mean, you go to the post office, there'll be 10 people in front of you. They still use rubber stamps in the year 2024, like they have ink pads in the array of rubber stamps. It's like time traveling back 100 years while they sit there stamping different things. And of course, they never make money. They're never profitable. They can barely deliver mail on time. And then we have to bail them out with taxpayer money every 2 or 3 years. Versus UPS or FedEx, private companies where you see these people, they jump out of their truck, they run your package to the door, they're moving because they have to be. They have to be efficient to make money. And then you have the post office, which is Dennis Miller used to say famously, just one notch above inert. So I think it's fantastic that Trump has this idea of an agency to study the efficiency and the efficacy of government agencies and make sure they're doing their job, they're streamlined, and we're not wasting taxpayer dollars. So, and, that said, I'm sure by next week, if not sooner, I'm getting my kind of New Hampshire drawl in there, if not sooner, the soon-to-be orange Kamala Harris will come out with a very similar program. It's just almost without question. Another thing I wanted to talk about is the Georgia school shooting. Of course, this has been all over the news. School has only been open 2 or 3 days. So in Georgia, a young man, 14-year-old kid, Colt Gray, shot and killed 4 people. I think it was 2 students and 2 teachers or adults at this Georgia school. And his father, Colin Gray, 54-year-old father, has now been arrested and charged too because his father had bought his son an AR. I know that this is getting heralded and applauded by many. I am completely against it. I think it's wrong, and here's why. This kid had been watched by the FBI, my understanding is a year ago, for some posts about having been bullied at school and threatening people. So he was on the radar of law enforcement, and as usual, they did nothing about it until it was too late. So why isn't law enforcement and our judicial system being charged like the father? And if we are going to start charging parents in situations like this, and I would think every young black man that shoots and kills somebody every weekend in Chicago, that we can soon expect their parents to be charged, I would think, if we are going to have an equitable distribution of law enforcement and the justice system. But of course, that will never happen. And in fact, this wouldn't have happened in Georgia had the shooter been black and had been from a black family. Again, I'm not inciting racism, not saying I think black people should get, I'm just stating a fact. I think they're setting an example. They're doing it because they've called these people white trash. Neighbors have had said otherwise. This young kid's mother, I guess, has had a checkered past, to say the least, with some police activity. But this goes back to what I've talked about on earlier shows, that we should be asking ourselves, why is our youth so disaffected and becoming violent, and why are school shootings and this kind of violence becoming so commonplace? We should be asking ourselves why. And I think the answer is actually pretty obvious. It's 20 or 30 or 40 years of unbridled, violent entertainment from Hollywood, vile entertainment from Hollywood, pornography and child pornography run rampant, the disintegration of the American family and the value of intact families, the complete dismissal of Judeo-Christian background or any religion. We've taken the Pledge of Allegiance out of school. We've taken prayer out of school. We have, for 30 or 40 years, let the liberal left dismantle all the social ties that kept families together and kept kids healthy. So I think if they're going to charge Colin Gray with the same charges of his son, that he is somehow guilty as well, I think all of us should step up and put our hands out, say, put the cuffs on me, because we all own a piece of this, including me. We've all let it happen. We've all stood by too silent while things happened that we knew were wrong. We knew our kids were getting damaged. Cell phones, social media, all this stuff, all the vile stuff that's out there, all protected under the guise of freedom of speech, has created a generation of young people that are lost, misguided, searching for something. And I just don't think charging the parents is the way out. Again, everyone's going to love this and say, yeah, get the dad. How is this different from you buy your child a car when they're 16 or 17 and they have an accident, a fatal accident, and kill somebody? Are you then guilty for vehicular homicide because you bought the car? And why isn't this applied to fentanyl dealers? If you're a fentanyl dealer, and this goes on all the time, and you deal drugs that kill a child or kill a person or kill an adult, it's a lethal drug. Then why are fentanyl dealers not brought in and charged with homicide? And by the way, they should be. I've been a proponent of that for a long time. If you deal those kinds of drugs that have lethal consequences, you have killed somebody. You sold pills to somebody. They took those pills. They died. Why would you not be held responsible for that, or at least partially responsible? But we don't do that. So again, this thing in Georgia, as far as I'm concerned, complete theater. It won't be applied equally across the board, believe me. This is all about the ethnic background of the people involved, in my opinion. And again, I back up my opinion with, if we're going to do that, then we need to spread that law equally across the board. And that, trust me, will never happen. So keeping it to a tight show this week, I appreciate comments or feedback on my position on this Georgia case where they charged the father. Certainly willing to entertain different points of view on that. But I feel pretty grounded in my position that, okay, if we are going to do that, then it has to go across the board. In every case where there's a shooting, we're going to have to dig in and see what the parents were like and where the gun came from, and did the parents do something to allow this to happen? And, well, we better start building some prisons, because if we're going to go down that road, then I would say in a matter of 2 or 3 years, about 82% of the American population will be incarcerated, which, by the way, might not be a bad thing. Also, another big news this week, Judge Merchan, the slippery reptilian judge in the Stormy Daniels case in New York, suddenly has delayed the sentencing of Donald Trump. They were supposed to sentence him September 18th. My expectation is that, yes, he would go to jail. Probably not for long, but again, the Dems, they want that visual. They want that. They have wanted to be able to call him a convicted felon. They've wanted to have the mugshot of him, which they got. And I'm sure they wanted the visual of Trump being brought away in an orange jumpsuit, which, by the way, he wouldn't have needed. They could have just stripped him naked and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But they wanted that visual of him being brought into jail, let out of the courtroom in handcuffs. Believe me. I'm sure they had their circle jerk tables all arranged and handy wipes all ready for everybody to, have their big orgasmic circle jerk as Trump was let off to jail. So that now sentencing has been delayed. And in the statement, they said they didn't want it to appear as though they were interfering with an election. Yeah, okay. All of a sudden, the New York judicial system is concerned about optics. Crazy. Wanted to finish out quickly with this story, and this comes from my Fort Myers, Florida division. My on-the-scene reporter down there, Rob, sent me this morning. This is my kind of gal, let me tell you. 84-year-old woman Del Bopple was in the news recently for wrestling an alligator. She got attacked by an alligator. She said she was walking her little dog closer than normal next to a pond, and this huge alligator came at her like a torpedo, she said. And she tossed her dog in the air and punched the alligator in the face. She was able to save her dog. She did lose a leg in the process, and I think part of her arm or wrist or something, but she did manage to save her beloved dog. No report on the condition of the alligator, but 84-year-old Del Bopple, my hero, and man, just doesn't everybody want a woman like that? Everyone wants a woman who's willing to wrestle an alligator and punch it in the face and just to save a dog. God, too bad she wasn't running for president. Anyways, thanks for joining the show. Carl Zahn's show. Don't forget, big difference between Secret Service and Secret Service. Always want to keep that in mind. And as we approach what is sure to be an epic and historic debate next week, which we will report back to you on that, in the interim, please, by all means, keep the blue side up.